Have you ever watched an old black and white movie and felt a strange sense of nostalgia, even for a time you never lived in? That feeling, that longing for a simpler, more prosperous time, wasn't an accident. It was manufactured, packaged, and sold to millions by the most powerful dream factory in the world, Hollywood. Today, we're pulling back the velvet curtain to explore when and how Hollywood sold the American dream. The story really begins in the early 20th century, a period of massive change. Immigrants were pouring into the country, cities were exploding, and the world was lurching between economic booms and devastating depressions. People needed hope. They needed a shared story to believe in, and the brand new medium of motion pictures was ready to provide it. Think about the classic silent comedies of Charlie Chaplin. His little tramp character was often an outsider, a poor immigrant struggling against overwhelming odds. But through pluck, cleverness, and a bit of luck, he always managed to find his footing, win the girl, or at least walk off into the sunset with his dignity intact. He was the embodiment of the idea that even the smallest person could make it in America. He wasn't just funny, he was aspirational. Then came the Golden Age, from the 1930s to the 1950s. This is when the Hollywood studio system perfected the art of selling the dream. After the Great Depression, audiences craved escapism, and Hollywood delivered it in spades. Lavish musicals with dancers in perfect sync, like those directed by Busby Berkeley, created a world of effortless glamour and abundance, a stark contrast to the breadlines outside the theater. It was during this time that the core tenets of the cinematic American dream were solidified. What were they? First, upward mobility. Anyone, regardless of their background, could achieve wealth and success through hard work and determination. Frank Capra was the master of this narrative. In films like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, a naive, honest man can take on a corrupt political system and win. In It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey discovers that a life of integrity and community service is the richest life of all. These weren't just stories, they were moral instruction manuals for the American soul. Second, the sanctity of the nuclear family and small-town life. Hollywood presented an idealized vision of America: white picket fences, loving parents, and wholesome kids. The Andy Hardy series starring Mickey Rooney was a perfect example. Life's problems were simple and could always be solved with a heart-to-heart chat with your wise old dad in the living room. This vision of suburban bliss became the ultimate goal, a symbol of having made it. And third, consumerism as a sign of success. The beautiful clothes, the fancy cars, the sprawling homes seen on screen weren't just props. They were symbols of the prosperity that awaited anyone who played by the rules. The movies taught people what to want. They created a culture where owning things became intertwined with the pursuit of happiness itself. But what about the people who were left out of this dream? For the most part, the golden age of Hollywood ignored them. The American dream it sold was overwhelmingly white and middle class. African Americans, when they appeared at all, were often relegated to roles as servants or entertainers. Other minority groups were either stereotyped or completely invisible. The dream wasn't for everyone. It was a curated fantasy that conveniently airbrushed out the nation's deep-seated inequalities. The cracks in this carefully constructed facade began to show in the post-war era. The 1950s saw the rise of a new kind of protagonist, the rebel. James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause wasn't striving for a house in the suburbs. He was suffocating in it. Marlon Brando in The Wild One was asked, "What are you rebelling against?" And his iconic answer was, "What do you got?" This was a new generation questioning the very dream their parents had been sold. They sensed the emptiness behind the perfect suburban smile. Then came the turbulent 1960s and 70s, and the dam broke. The Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, and a wave of social upheaval made the old Hollywood fantasies look naive and dishonest. A new wave of filmmakers, the New Hollywood, emerged. Directors like Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, and Sidney Lumet began telling different stories. The Godfather showed the American dream as a brutal, violent enterprise. Taxi Driver depicted a world of urban decay and psychological collapse. These films argued that the American dream was not just elusive, but often a corrupting and destructive nightmare. The dream was dead, or perhaps it had been a lie all along. Even today, Hollywood still grapples with this legacy. We see it in films like The Pursuit of Happiness, which returns to the classic narrative of overcoming adversity through sheer will. But we also see it in movies like Nomadland or Parasite, which critically examine the economic and social failures that make the dream impossible for so many. The American dream, as sold by Hollywood, was one of the most successful and long-running marketing campaigns in history. It gave millions of people a sense of hope and a shared national identity. But it was always a simplified, sanitized version of reality. It was a beautiful, powerful, and often misleading story. It shaped not just how the world saw America, but how America saw itself. And that is a power that is, in its own way, the stuff that dreams are made of. Thank you so much for watching. What movie do you think best represents the American dream or the critique of it? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through film history, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content. See you next time.